I can't even. There's nothing left for me to.
I need you to calm down.
No, I can't. I can't.
When you're a naturally curious person or someone who is easily inspired, the world of the internet is honestly a world of wonder, but also dread, because you are just constantly picking up new passions to research daily. And you probably find yourself at this crossroad where you're wanting a new hobby, but then the other side is thinking about how much free time you have left, how much the cost is, how you'll somehow fit it into your growing list with all the others, till overwhelm and analysis paralysis kicks in and you basically just do nothing. And that's kind of a cycle you constantly rinse and repeat. And that was honestly my problem too, until I figured out that the problem wasn't that I had too many hobbies, it was because I treated every single one of them as an emergency. So basically in this video, I will tell you my method on how I allowed room in my busy adult life for multiple interests, with lasting results as a person who would get overwhelmed and fall into that cycle of never really getting anything done. So hopefully you can glean some information and apply them to your own life, because I never thought I would get to this point either. So in my opinion, when you're a multi-passionate person, you have to create an ecosystem. Exhibit A. And I'll give you all the steps so by the end of this you'll be able to manage all your passions too. So I too have a growing list of hobbies like violin, piano, guitar, composing, basically you name it. But I don't have the time for all of this. How am I supposed to be a good egg and contribute to society when there is a ticking clock behind my head? And then I only have a couple golden years until I get something like arthritis. Therefore, I watched a bunch of productivity and time blocking YouTubers who seem to be gurus at scheduling their time. I would buy all of these agendas, I would feel highly motivated, and then I would get home after a long commute, throw my backpack on the bench, hang up my keys, and act like I didn't even know that these agendas or journals existed. I don't know, and just fall into this cycle of just being kind of upset about myself and thinking that I don't really have anything to show. But then something changed. I came across this amazing guitarist, Yvette Young. She brought out her violin during one of her quick little music sketches, and I just fell in love. And I was like, okay, how do you learn the violin? And this is years of failing at going self-taught on the guitar. And Reddit basically said immediately get a teacher. So through that journey of trial and error and talking to different teachers, I basically found a method that allowed me to stick to violin for 3 years now, and I started adding on different hobbies on top of that, and now I want to share that with you guys. Okay, so we're going to dive into it. I got my festive eggnog and candy cane. I don't know how this actually tastes together, but it's good. It tastes like a peppermint milkshake. So, okay, let's dive into the motivation ecosystem. Think of it as 3 levels of risk and reward. Okay, so you can see we have 3 tiers. Tier 1 is your core pillars. Tier 2 is your supportive branches. And Tier 3 is the dabble zone. So, Tier 1, high effort, high interest, and high value. These are your identity level pursuits. They are what you want to tell people when they tell you, tell me a couple things about yourself. They usually require structure, lessons, and constant practice, but they give the biggest return emotionally or creatively. So basically, the focus of Tier 1 is that you build one habit at a time until it becomes part of your identity. So let's do some examples. So this is me, T. So when someone says, "Tell me about yourself," I know that I am a good egg. I know that I am a data scientist, and I love cats. But thanks to Tier 1, I put in a lot of time and effort, and now I can also say that I am a violinist. These are things that I do every day, and I actively maintain them. So now that we know me, we go back to Tier 1. So in Tier 1, I set the rule for myself that the focus is 1 to 2 Tier 1 habits per season. Invest in the teacher's curriculum and consistent So Tier 1 are basically your long-term disciplines. And I have the rule that you can only add one new Tier 1 once your previous one runs automatically. And what I mean by running automatically, I mean the habit phase where you basically show up for it without internal resistance. So for Tier 1, something that I am actively maintaining and I'm feeling barely any resistance to anymore is going to the gym and working out. I am consistently going to the gym, I'd say 5 to 6 times a week, and it's just part of my lifestyle now. I wouldn't yet consider myself a gym buff. Maybe in another month or so. Once I start seeing the gains, I'll probably move that over to my identity. So since me going to the gym is pretty automatic now, I am now actively trying to practice on the piano for about 15 minutes a day, and I invested in a piano teacher. So that is my hobby that I'm currently building to move it up and make it part of my identity. Got this chalk marker all over my finger trying to activate it. So I would say maybe build 3 to 4. So Tier 2 is the supportive branches, and I would consider them the medium effort, medium value, and moderate interest. So these keep you inspired, but they don't need full structure. Basically, you can rotate through them to stay balanced and avoid burnout. They have like loose routines, maybe study sessions when the inspiration hits, seasonal challenges, book clubs, skill clubs, etc. So yeah, they can just shift weekly or seasonally depending on your Tier 1 load. And they really, I think they just keep inspiration alive and kind of cross-pollinate with your main pursuit. And I recommend 1 to 3 Tier 2 activities per week. That's my sweet spot. But basically, if a Tier 2 starts demanding daily focus, I basically just promote it to Tier 1 in the next season or demote whatever is in here because something just grabbed higher attention. So for me, currently in my Tier 2 is guitar playing, calligraphy, composing, language learning. And this one, journaling, I consider it a bit more medium effort just because I just don't find it fun, and you'll see what I mean when we get to Tier 3. It's a bit more of a chore, so that's why it's there. Oh, and I'm sorry about the images only being yellow. There is something wrong with the sensor chip on my color ink cartridge, and I just figured that out when I needed to print off these images, so that is why. All of these have the ability to get promoted to a Tier 1 at some point, but I just kind of bounce around them whenever, like I said, inspiration hits. Next is Tier 3, my favorite tier and probably everybody else's favorite tier. So Tier 3 is low effort, but high play. And I guess you could also say, Running out of space, but low commitment. Oh, ran out of space. Oh, I forgot to say that tier 2, I would just say like rotate through 1 to 3 a week. And remember, you don't have to follow this. You guys can, of course, make your own ecosystem. This is just things that work for me. So, tier 3. These are basically just our dabble zones, exploration and rest. No schedules, you just let them flow, and they're meant to be short-term flares of curiosity so that you can recharge our top tiers. You can do them multiple times a day, you can rotate through them however you want. They exist to prevent burnout and keep your creativity playful. So, no guilt, no metrics. For my tier 3, of course, we have video games, TV and movies, and reading is kind of subjective. I mean, it depends on like what you're reading, so I would put that in the middle. That's a middle one. Like, you could be researching or annotating. Like, that one's a middle one. So, middle as in between tier 2 and tier 3. Like, it could be something very relaxed, or, I mean, you could read something more academic or nonfiction. Skateboarding, rollerblading, etc. Like, outdoor activities. I forgot YouTube. That's tier 2, because I'm kind of taking YouTube seriously, but it's, you know, I'm doing maybe once a month right now until I get into the flow of things, and then maybe I can change that to tier 1 sooner or later, but yeah, obviously I have a lot on my plate. Oh, and also, I'll put this on like the ground because these are like inklings of ideas, but not really a thing yet, so I'll put these guys right here, you know? This is my hobbies on deck, basically. I'm kind of curious about ballet. It may or may not join my ecosystem. And miniature, like crafting miniatures or, you know, doing like a dollhouse or something. Yeah, but they're not yet in my ecosystem. They are, like I said, on deck to maybe enter my triangle. So yeah, so in the comments, if you have any questions about building your own ecosystem, you can leave them down below, and you could also try mapping out your own in the comment section. Yeah, that'd be cool to see everybody's interest in ecosystems. So if that was a little bit confusing, there's a metaphor I kind of like to think of it as, and that is that there's only one builder, but there are plenty of rooms to do. So kind of imagine your motivation being that you are a craftsman and you are taking over an old mansion, and you can only, of course, work on one room at a time. And then once you are done with that room, you can move on to the next one and maintain the finished room. That's kind of what I mean by building one tier 1 at a time. So that kind of brings me into the learning slope. So when you basically add a new tier 1, you are signing up for basically a season of imbalance. And I like to think of it as 3 separate phases. Phase 1 is the learning slope, where you're putting in maximum amounts of effort and you are seeing very little visible progress. And this phase is kind of just cognitive overload. It doesn't mean that you don't have talent. It's just that you are putting down new neural pathways and wiring new connections. So it kind of feels like failure, but it's really just heavy lifting. So during this phase, I kind of like to keep things short and sweet. So maybe, you know, music wise, I would just sit down for 5 to 15 minutes a day, get a feeling for it, become familiar with the tool. For working out, I had a lot of anxiety joining a gym and going to the gym. So I set up a goal of just going down and doing 15-minute walks on the treadmill. And while I was doing that, you know, I was getting a scope of the land and watching people use the different machines. And I say that's about 0 to 3 months that phase, that you kind of stay in that phase, or at least I stay in that phase. The next phase is the plateau of familiarity. I'd say this one lasts 3 to 6 months. It's kind of like you're taking off the rose-colored glasses, so you don't really get those dopamine hits as easily. And you start seeing really like micro improvements. And it's kind of the phase of refinement when you are telling your brain, yes, you have to practice even when you're bored. So to pass this phase, I really like to take video practice logs, just so overall you can see the slight, minute details. So you could do it that way, or you could even get a practice journal or something. And this is actually really where community and teacher feedback help you get over that hurdle. And the last phase I call the momentum curve, and that's 6 months on. Finally, when your skills stop fighting you, and you're kind of just in the habit phase where your feet move without thinking, or everything is just like flows. Now you can probably call this hobby or passion a maintained tier 1. But really, there is a tier that I did not discuss. And this is basically tier 0, the foundation. Because before tier 1 can even thrive, you need stability in your tier 0. So this is mental health, this is sleep, nutrition, social connection, therapy, boundaries. And when your mental health is solid, you can hold your max capacity. And my max capacity, from the chart, you guys can tell, it is basically 1 maintained tier 1, 1 in active development. I'd say 2 to 3 tier 2s, and basically a free-for-all tier 3. But during burnout, grief, stress, I collapse the system. I demote tier 1s to maintenance only. I hibernate tier 2 for maybe like a week or a month, however long I need. And I basically live in tier 3.
A final notice from the study. The darkest day of the year is here. Take it not as a warning, but as a threshold. It is the day the light stops retreating. Nothing is finished yet. Nothing is required yet. The study recognizes this day not for what is accomplished, but for what is quietly chosen. So, fellow scholar, until the next dispatch, I'll leave a candle lit for you.